All right, so yesterday's sermon, Train for Eternity, featured Pastor Brian busting in his bike. We got Pastor Rafa pumping iron and pulling on that rower. Pastor Gerald, did you get motivated to pump some iron yesterday afternoon?
I'm ready to go. You ready to pump you up like the old Schwarzenegger clip.
That's right.
He even referenced Arnold Schwarzenegger, and yeah, I thought Brian had a great sermon yesterday. He declined to be on part of our thing here this morning, but that's all good.
So, okay, so he mentioned, Paul mentioned talking about godliness has a value for all things, but physical training has some value. Can you name a place in everyday life, maybe your work, your parenting, maybe conflict, where godliness paid dividends immediately? You think of like lifters going in the weight room and they're feeling that pump, like that.
Yeah.
And so, where have you felt, is godliness more of a longer term benefit, or can you feel or see some like immediate benefit off the bat?
Yeah, I think that's almost the crux of the issue, because I think a lot of times it's hard to feel and see the tangible result for godliness, like giving, for instance. Like you give and you give and you give, maybe every week or whatever the case might be, and you wonder, like, am I being, what's that doing for me, or you're reading your Bible or whatever it might be. Like, I don't feel like I'm growing in grace. Or sometimes people are specifically doing a Bible study because they can't forgive somebody, and they're studying about forgiveness, and it's not happening. And whereas sometimes the physical things feel like there's more of the immediate, the tangible results. So I think that's why it's hard for us sometimes to see the, like, yes, I'm obeying God, and yes, I'm obeying His word, but really, I don't know. That's where the disconnect, I think, comes in.
Yeah. This podcast will be a lot. The theme of this will just be, paralleling physical choices versus your spiritual choices, and again, using the common language of being undertrained physically. There's obviously results for that, but as you think of somebody, maybe yourself individually, or somebody you're mentoring, somebody who's undertrained, what could be some warning lights of, what could be your waistline growing in your spiritual world? You know what I'm saying? Then what are the signs that you see for somebody who maybe is undertrained spiritually, or even yourself in the season?
Yeah, I think, when it comes to things of God, if we, again, it's so easy to get out of biblical habits. We have a class called Christianity 201 that's really about helping you develop habits of reading God's word and meditating on God's word and prayer and things like that. When you're doing those things, you realize and feel the benefit that they are, but it's so easy to just, I'll skip today, and then I'll skip 2 days, and we'll catch up next time, and all those types of things. And then you look back 6 months later and you can't remember the last time you did whatever, and it feels monumental to get back into to that type of thing. So I think the slippery slope or the slide is when we, sure, anybody has a schedule that's busy, and you can have unexpected things to come up, certainly. But if it becomes more the practice than the rule, that I'm constantly, not finding time for those types of things, I think our affections for God will wane.
Sure.
Like, when I'm really in tune with things of God, I want to serve better. I want to, be involved in something. I want to pray for somebody. I want to do all those types of things. And when we're out of those habits, it's just easier to live carnally for ourselves.
What do you think people are feeding their mind with and when they're feeling undertrained? Or what is there something specific you think, or do you think the distractions of their world, their life, social media? What do you think practically? What could they be feeding their mind with instead?
Yeah, that's a great question, and even I thought about that in light of the whole catastrophic event with Charlie Kirk getting assassinated this week. Like, you just see the simple things of life are so, are what you value. Seeing a video of him and his wife walking down a beach with their kids running around, and you realize that that he is more than a face out front on a political platform, or even a godly type of platform. Like, the little things, I think, are so important. We just had a beautiful funeral for Dustin Davis, and the the music that was played before was just piano, but the young lady that was playing was just it was so moving, and it's so easy to be distracted with things that aren't godly, and it's when we have, she was playing these hymns that I know from years, years before, and I'm just thinking the words in my head, and it's a reminder of faith. And so I don't know if I'm exactly answering your question there or not, but I just think when things habits are so important, both in good ways and bad ways. If you have habits on the right thing, you will grow towards godliness. When you have habits that lead you away from God, they will obviously be a hindrance to your faith.
Sure. I want to touch on probably something that hits home to a lot of listeners or viewers is media scrolling, social media scrolling. So if you were to look at your own life or just to advise someone who maybe social media is something that pulls them away from God, that maybe keeps them undertrained, if you viewed that as a pantry, like what are the snacks on the shelves you got to be
Yeah.
pulling off? So what needs tossing? How do we walk that line of social media, or making sure we're not undertrained in the scrolling? Because I feel like it is a major thing that as I've worked in our small groups or just communicating with people, like social media is a huge thing. It's not a bad thing, but how can that
Yeah.
be something that we can look through?
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing. Even like myself, like sometimes I try to stay involved in social media, even to see what's going on in the lives of our congregation. But I think maybe in my mind I use that as an excuse, like that's why I'm doing it. Then, I love sports and I want to see what's going on
Yeah.
with the Phillies and the Eagles, and you watch this video and that video and everything else. Again, I think the Charlie Kirk whole thing just. I don't know. That event was such a poignant in my life, and I heard one thing. I heard his wife talk about after the fact was how Charlie used to kind of take a Sabbath from his phone, like from I think she said from like Friday night until Saturday night, the phone went away and in his drawer. And I thought, man, here's a guy pretty plugged in with
Mm-hmm.
worldly events and worldly leaders, and he does that, and I don't do that.
Sure.
And not that I have to do that to attain any sync, but I think the importance of keeping a Sabbath is so
Oh, yeah.
so vital. I think I've shared this before, but in seminary one time we had to you had the choice either to study and take a test for part of your grade, or you had to take a 1 day Sabbath,
Mm-hmm.
detached from any sort of phone or anything, and you had to be in nature and you had to think on things of God, and you just had to write a brief little kind of summary of the day. And like the first hour that I was doing, it had to be eight consecutive hours, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
what in the world am I going to do for the next 7 hours or whatever? But it was just so um, just incredible. It allowed me to think and listen to God. And but again, that being said, it's easy to do that when it's in place of a test. But
Sure.
doing that in the middle of your life, most people are thinking I couldn't do that for 4 hours, let alone a whole day. But I think there's such an importance of being. We don't need to be up on the next thing all the time, whether it be political things or even things of the world. Yes, it's good to be connected, but I think there's a fine balance, and I think I know at least for myself, I have to watch that line. I
Mm-hmm.
try to put the phone away when I'm at home. Those types of things
Yeah.
I think are important because yeah, you can just scroll till your battery runs out and then hook up a charger and keep
Yeah.
rolling.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's definitely sad when I've had my girls, like I'm sitting here on my phone and I've had my girls like call me out. It's really
yeah,
bad when you got a 5-year-old that telling me to get off my phone. But when we had my wife and I just read a book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, and that was some practical because social media wants your face to be looking at it the whole
yeah,
time, and our world wants you locked into Fox News or CNN, whatever. They want you, that's what makes their money. So it is something that is tough to get away from, just like in any
yeah.
other addiction. So for you personally, again, getting more practical, when are you most likely to like binge scrolling? When you're maybe tired or under stress, or what for you personally? Maybe these people can relate to you. What would you say for your
Like
life?
times that I
Yeah,
I
or
yeah
constantly scrolling, or just
yeah
feel like a higher draw to that. Yeah.
yeah. I think maybe it's when I'm busier. Honestly, like you're in between something and you sit down for 10 minutes, or I'm going to run home to get lunch or dinner real quick and have to get back here, and it's almost like um, maybe I feel like it's decompressing my mind, relaxing, but I think it's the opposite. Just um, you got to get caught up and you got to see what's going
Mm,
on, and you got to see what's happening, and especially in the world. You see what's trending on Twitter or whatever, and you know, um, I think personally, it's when I'm busier that I want to
yeah.
that I'm more drawn to it somehow.
You think it's just like a break or a distraction?
Probably both, and again, it can. Not saying it's always bad, it's always evil or anything like that.
Sure.
There's times I think it can be, good to get your mind off something or whatever. Um, but I think again, I think there has to be a balance.
Hmm.
Is there ever a time when it's not on? Is there ever a time when your phone's off or it's not accessible to you or whatever the case might be? Because I think that needs to be part of who we are too. Not
Definitely.
you know, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when we didn't have phones, and it's like, how do we even function? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
if I walk away from, my, I got my watch to let me know if I'm disconnected from my phone. It's like part of me,
Hmm. Yeah.
and that's not always necessary. We're not that important.
Yeah. I think I struggled when I first got rid of my social media off my phone. It was I'm gonna miss out on something. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
be the first to know
yeah,
about something. Like you said, it's just like the FOMO or like, how am I gonna know about this? My family member's update, or even I need to unsubscribe from this email because, but how am I gonna miss this? I'm gonna miss the
yeah.
sales or
Right.
whatever. It's just marketing 101.
Yeah.
But Pastor Brian talked about cultural diets like sports, news, markets. That what's your ESPN equivalent? Like a healthy, it's okay in moderation, but the harmless thing that quietly eats your attention. Is it your phone? Is it something else that maybe it's not a harm? I mean, it's a harmless thing in its core, but maybe
Yeah.
something that maybe continues to take away your reps from godly things and more towards the things of the world.
Yeah. I don't. I guess I try to keep a balance with a lot of things, but I've always been just drawn to sports, like especially football season, and baseball is the Phillies happen to be good this year, so they're
Sure.
an extra thing I got to keep my eye on, or got to see what's happening. Um, and there's good things in that, but it also, it needs to be. Again, it can't be all consuming.
Hmm.
When it's all consuming, and sometimes you can see that in someone's life, or you see these rabid fans on,
Sure.
they're flashing around the stadiums, and people that are just so intense and so wound up, and um, hopefully you don't get to that point or whatever. But I think in general, I'm not a big guy into politics in general or things like that. Or there's not other things I don't, I like simple things in life. I like watching documentaries on TV and
Hmm.
those types of things. But I always enjoy keeping tabs on some of the sports scene,
Sure.
even the behind the scenes stuff. When is this guy going to be back from an injury? And again, it's we all have our hobbies, I guess. But is some of these things that are not bad, but are they distracting you from the things that are better?
When you if someone were to come in your office and talk about their social media or their phone addiction, what would you recommend as something practical to like this next 7 days or this next 2 weeks, whatever? Like, what kind of step would you advise them to kind of maybe help a viewer to be like, this is me. I feel lost in this. I don't want to be like this. So, what are some practical steps that you would recommend?
Yeah, I think the Sabbath break is probably the first thing I would start with, and I'm not saying they have to do it for a whole day. That might
Mm-hmm.
feel too over the top or whatever. But like start with something small or something just I remember the first time that I really dialogued about fasting, not just fasting for physically, but spiritually, and like to fast for a whole day seemed like impossible or whatever. But like if you start out skipping one meal or whatever, it's something more doable.
Sure.
Um, and I think that's it's always good to do things and make subtle changes in our life because they have a better chance of lasting than
Mm-hmm.
than I'm gonna rewrite
Mm-hmm.
my whole life in one moment. That usually doesn't work. So
Sure.
I would say start with something small, and I do think phones can be even I live right across the street from the park, and I saw a guy the other day, and he was walking, and he was like, you could tell he was like reading a book on his. It was bigger than a normal phone. Maybe it was a small little iPad or whatever. And he's walking as he's reading this thing, and I'm thinking, really, we're going that far? Like, you can't take a walk without like having a book or something like that. And I don't know. I'm not trying to cast judgment, but we are just. I remember one of my Bible professors say we are entertaining ourselves to death. We just
Hmm.
think we constantly need something to stimulate our mind, to
Yeah.
entertain us, to keep our attention. When it's good to to look around and enjoy nature and
Yeah.
see the handiwork, especially this time of year. It's just beautiful. They're starting to do crops, and the days are getting shorter, but the sky is amazing at night. And I don't
Mhm.
know, if you can't see God's the beauty of His creation, I think we're missing something.
Yeah. I want to speak specifically to the, let's say, the teenagers who are in a totally different world that even I grew up 20 years ago in high school. Like we didn't have phones. I got a phone when I was 16, but my phone was a flip phone, and I had to pay extra for the text messages and all that jazz. But our best game was we would literally hide around Fairbury in our cars and like time us who could find the next person, like hide and seek in our cars, just burning
Yeah,
gas. That was our entertainment. But now today, entertainment is defined as you're on TikTok or you're scrolling or whatever. So like when you think about teens and again living in a different world, how do we advise and coach them with their own Sabbath and their own routines, because they're walking in that school and 98% of them are the exact same, where everybody's scrolling. Did you see this? Did you see that snap? Whatever.
yeah.
So is it a different mindset if a 40-year-old comes in your office versus a 15-year-old? Like, how do you coach a 15-year-old that has because I'm sure there's plenty of parents that are dealing with this. Like, how do I parent my kid well with a cell phone?
Yeah.
And so, what would you advise to that?
No, I think that's a real issue. It's interesting. My son told me last week that they had a special guest speaker at the school, and the guy's story was that he posted something on social media when he was 12, and I can't remember what job he had, but he got a real good job, but he lost his job because of something he posted on social media. 13 years before, or whatever the case might be, and it was, I could tell like that. My son was kind of like, like that was something that made sense to him. Like, yeah, hey, this is, yeah, you can post something stupid, but it's going to be on there
Mhm.
for life. I do think that it's that the cell phone whole deal with teens, it is their whole world. They say the best way to punish your teens, take their phone away, or to,
Mhm.
shut off their data, or whatever the case might be. And I think as parents we need to. We got Ryan a phone this last year for the first time, and we put some like tracking things on his phone, and we told him, hey, it's still our phone. We could take it from you, and he's a good kid and things like that. But I also talked to him at that time about even things you'll be tempted to look at,
Mhm.
pornography and things like.
Yeah,
We need to be proactive as
for sure,
parents for
for sure.
sure. And I think as adults we love our phones, but like when we're teens, it's like
Mhm.
their lifeblood. Like they can't get in touch with their friends if they don't have their phone. Like it feels like a whole different world to them in some sense. So I think it's helpful to try to get them to. And I don't know, I don't have all the best answers of the ways to do that, but to just be present in their lives
Yeah.
and have conversations with them, and and just you can even monitor and see how long they're. I
Mhm.
have an app that sends me like how long Ryan's on his phone type of deal. So there's a lot of things you can do to try to help them, but again, we can't you can't regulate godliness
Sure,
necessarily.
sure.
So it's you try to put some guardrails, boundaries in place, because
Yeah.
yeah, our internet is it's a great thing, but it's also a devastating thing.
They say the quote, "Rules without relationship leads to rebellion," and I
Yep.
think that, and I also think as we as parents can model, and I don't do the best job of this, but model how to use our phones well,
Yeah.
because if we are modeling to them, I'm lost in this. What does that show
Yep.
them? And so I'm calling myself out just as much as I am anybody else. But let's say I've screwed up so many times as a parent. I'm sure you have too. So like in those moments where maybe the phone is the conversation piece of they were on it. more than they should have, or they looked at something they should have, and maybe we reacted in a way that maybe, if God was in the room, he wouldn't be the most proud of. So how do we walk back and like model reconciliation, or like how do you repair and model that when maybe you're like, I knew I messed up and I just kind of put a wall between me and my kid?
Yeah, I just think I think whether it be with your kids, whether it be with your spouse, being the first one to say you're sorry or that you were wrong always goes a long way. That hey, I messed up. I should have done this better, and I wish whatever. And because when we try to get someone else to move our direction, it's better if we move their direction in general. So I don't know. I think that's the again when it's their phones and it's social media and things like that. It's hard because they're growing and they're getting point to the part where they're actually when they're 18 they're adults these days, and it feels like those choices are tougher all the time.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think relationship is such an important part,
Sure.
to be able to talk about anything with them and try to model it and what you watch and what you're on and even like translates into what you watch on television. If you're constantly watching stuff that you got to wait till the kid goes to bed to watch it, that's probably not ideal. Now sometimes there's good shows that are documentaries that are whatever. I get it. I'm not saying, but if your kid says, "Oh, there's mom and dad going," they're going to watch something as soon as I go to bed that I can't watch. I think we have to evaluate if that's good for me to watch.
For sure.
So it's I don't know. Our kids they see right through us.
Yeah.
We're not going to snowball our kids, and they're gonna be able to tell our relationship with God. They're going to be able to tell our relationship with our phones. We're not going to pull the wool over their eyes. They see us probably more real than anybody else in the world, other than maybe your spouse.
Good. So I want to finish up. It's all great, and I want to kind of maybe I'll let you kind of pick what direction we finish with, and the fact of something practical about what we talked about. I want like whether that would be something social media practical that an individual can take and maybe make a change towards the better, or how they parent their kids, or how they read the Bible. Like so how can we train, go back to the exercise metaphor, how can we train the next 7 days till we meet again on Sunday? What's the best advice you could have, or what would be the next step that you would advise somebody to help them get in the workout routine of their spiritual life?
That's a good question. Yeah. Just a note, I don't hear these questions before. Sometimes it
Yes.
might be better to hear them before. But I guess I go back to something, even a mindset that Brian left us with yesterday. He brought the second service, he brought his two grandsons up on stage, and he, he kind of talked about, here's the future and all those types of things. I think when we have a positive message for our kids, our grandkids, it goes a long way rather than trying to browbeat them with, you did this wrong, you did that wrong, or whatever. So like being real, being there for your kids. Hannah brought, her kids there yesterday, and I was sitting kind of right across from them. And when Brian's riding the bike around doing his little thing before, they were just like proud as a peacock. That's a grandpa there, and he's he's proclaiming faith boldly, and they're always going to remember that. If they see you passionate and loving, and Brian calls a spade a spade. He's not going to let things go, whether it be his kid or his grandkids. But I think when we can have that positive message for our children, it's there's just something that it's more digestible, rather than you're going to do this and you're going to like it type of mentality. Yeah. Like this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you type of thing. So I just think there's a way, and believe me, I don't always have that modeled perfectly in my own life, but I think a positive message, a positive reinforcement of being intentional with our kids and our grandkids is really part of leading a godly life that goes a long way, and training in godliness.
Your life is a billboard, and I think that's huge. Like the theme being, try to guide your kids, but you're going to mess up. Come back to them with a repentant heart. And same with your spouse, right? No, none of us have perfect marriages. We're going to mess up. But at the end of the day, model it like Christ would, and just asking for forgiveness and making it right. And no, that's a great theme to think about. And hopefully some of this stuff has been practical to take with you as you're listening, and we're looking forward to meeting next week. But Pastor, why don't you finish up in prayer?
Yep, let's pray. God, thankful for again a beautiful day and just a great day of worship yesterday. We're just pray for families that are hurting and lost right now, and just those that are dealing with sickness and illness. And God, there's many needs out there in our church family, but we know that you know them all, you see them all, and you are the ultimate one that can heal and fix them all. So God, we're thankful for your love. We're thankful most of all for Jesus. It's in His name we pray. Amen.